All right, so for today's lesson, we are going through the unfair journey. Now, this one is a middle lesson that would have been taught in the actual classroom. So this is a just a formality of having the lesson for review. So yesterday we talked about how the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor led to the U.S.'s involvement, and in post the Pearl Harbor attack, or right after the Pearl Harbor attack, America was both confused, scared, and looking for somebody to blame. And President Franklin D. Roosevelt, on February 19th, 1944, signed the Executive Order 9066, which basically blamed all the Japanese and in America and told them that they were not welcome anymore. So here's what we're going to do for the next part of this. Americans blame the Japanese. We're just going to do a 5-minute notice and wonder. Actually, we'll make it a 10-minute notice and wonder, or as long as students have questions. Go ahead and look at these two. There are also printed copies at your desk with both of these pictures there. Go ahead and tell me, spend some time looking at them. I'll give you guys like 1 minute to look at them. Then afterwards, you can ask me questions, or you can talk out what you notice and wonder what's going on here. Okay? And this activity would be held for about 5-10 minutes. Let me go ahead and be the student in this case. I noticed the date is April 1st, 1942, and down here it says that they must be evacuated by Tuesday, April 7th, 1942, which gives them less than 6 days. I noticed that one is meant for the Japanese people, or those of Japanese ancestry. I'm seeing the word alien and non-alien. I'm seeing streets that they're not allowed to be at. And I'm seeing that people need to get rid of, they have services for the leasing, storage, and disposition of most of their property. So I don't know what that means, but I want to know what that means. And transportation of limited clothing. So does that mean we're not getting a lot of stuff to take with us? And on the other side, this looks like a San Francisco Times newspaper where it says, ouster all Japs, and I don't know what Japs means, in California near. So it definitely looks like this is meant for regular Americans in their everyday life. And then we move into the next part of our lesson here after about 10 minutes of what this is, directing them, making sure that they're going to the right places that we need to have them at. So I will say that at this point in time, we did see that they would have to get rid of their stores and a lot of their property. And I would say many of their people lost their stores and parts of their community while doing this, because even though the government had set up programs to where they said that you can leave your stuff here, or the U.S. will hold on to it, it was never really the case. Instead, what the U.S. did was they took away the property, or they would get rid of it, and that would be done after it's like, okay, so many people lost their stores, but let's see what we see in here. What are the types of businesses that these Japanese people were running? What do we notice and wonder? Now, these pictures, and I would pass these out to each of their desks, would be on their desk, and they would get to see large photos, and they just pass them around to each group. So what do you notice and wonder about this? One group would have one image, the other one would have another, and so on and so forth. And we just roll through various images of this for another 5-10 minutes. And then this would be the end for day 1. Day 2, students come into class, and they would have a relocation book to share at their table. Running through the relocation pamphlet, it's definitely looking at, this is what you would do. If you would come into a building, these would be on your desks, and this shows you the basically itinerary of what would happen for you running through this. And if we notice that this is printed out in English. It's not printed out in Japanese. And if we looked really closely at these images, they are written in English. They are not written in Japanese. So would you say that these people have a great tie to their country of origin if a lot of what they're reading is in English? Do they look like they're wearing traditional Japanese clothing, or are they wearing more of the American style clothing? Do you see them in suits and ties and nice business attire? And then students would go through that booklet, and I'd walk them through some of the various things that are unfair about the book. And then this is where they went to. So a family that was in, say, California would go to Manzanar Camp, and there are certain processes and steps that you were put through along with this. So once you left your relocation center building, you would go home and gather up all the things, and then they would see these various pictures, and I would say, well, what do we notice and wonder about these pictures? Well, I notice and wonder that I see a long line of buses, cars, a lot of people, a lot of luggage, more people coming out, lining up with cars. I see Japanese people on trains. I see a little luggage tag or something that you'd attach onto that. But that little girl, both those little girls are wearing it, and so is that person there. So I don't know why they have the tags on. So that's really interesting. And we'd go into the fact that people were forced to leave from their homes, and then on that date, they literally had buses and trains that would take them and pick them up to these great camps that they were supposed to live at. The rumors were supposed to be that it was just a great place to be able to keep them and hold them, to keep the American people safe, and to make sure that there was no internal conflicts or turmoil at all. Jumping back to this page, so if you lived in Southern California, San Francisco area, you would be shipped down to Manzanar Camp. Anywhere else, you see Poston or Poston, the Gilia River, or the Tule Lake. People in Nevada and Utah came to the Topaz one, and you just have these people moving around. And this map is bigger, but these are the ones we want to focus on, is in California. So if you were California Japanese, you were to be relocated to these camps where you would stay at for the extended period of the war. And what was camp life like? Let's go ahead and take a look at these pictures. And each table should have a copy of these pictures. Go ahead and discuss that with your groups. What do you see in these pictures? Go ahead and just take a minute, look around. I want you to notice all the small little details. One's about a camp, the other one's about inside of the camp. Go ahead and go. This activity would last for about 10-15 minutes, as I really want the students to notice and wonder with these photos what they see, and are they seeing a happy camp life? And it's like, yes, I'm seeing a barber shop, so at least they can get their haircut. Or what is a barbershop? A barbershop is where you can get your haircut. It's like, oh, and it looks like we have workers there. They all have nice uniforms on. They're smiling in the photo. Over here, we see a nice, happy Japanese family. It looks like a summer camp style. They have furniture that they can sit on. They have a nice heater. They have paintings. They have art supplies. I see a Christmas tree. It must be around Christmas time, so they get to celebrate Christmas. It looks like the beds might be behind that curtain. It looks like life is pretty happy. They have a light in there that's able to provide them with a good a way to be able to see at night, so they don't have to worry. And then what this ends up doing is we then say, okay, we're going to track this journey that they've had. So for your assessment, and they'll have all these various pictures that they've had in their groups. And it's, okay, so in this map, and they get a hand-drawn copy of like where my camp is, I want you to track the journey. What happens? What's number 1? What's number 2? And they'd have to put the pictures in the slot. And this is the answer that they'd go in. You'd get to go to this relocation center. You obviously see the notices where people are lining up. They go to their buses. You have 3 different photos for buses and traffic here, here, and here. The 4th one is you get tagged. You get your luggage tagged, and then you get loaded. You're going to the train, you get tagged, and then you go immediately on to the train, and then you get off the train here at 4, and then you get tagged to go to one of these camps here or here. I believe this one is the Utah camp, and the one up above is the Manzanar camp. So yeah, just you have those very different camps, and this is their assessment for tracking their overall journey. And it's definitely setting them up for what the U.S. wanted to show us. The Japanese have a really glorious camp life for this lesson. But then the start of the next lesson is going into what was camp life like? Can you remember what that was? And using these sentence frames, they would write down as a group, families were relocated because of, and they would fill in the blank, because of the bombing of Pearl Harbor, or because of Executive Order 9066, or because they didn't want them in California, and or this and that. Or they could do, I think that the journey was hard for many of the Japanese families because they felt, or because they left blank behind. Sorry, they left blank behind. So did they have to leave families, friends, businesses, something that we really focused on as part of their community? I know that the Japanese people were mistreated because of, and it's like, what did you see in the photos that made you think that? So this is definitely letting the students project and think to themselves, hey, what do you feel that was the mistreatment? So go ahead and use these sentence frames for anything that you want to have in your project, and write it down on the bottom of your map tracking that you have, and this will be your exit ticket. Go ahead and copy it word for word. And the word mistreated is treated badly, treated poorly. They were being very mean. So go ahead and use that. I will see you guys. I will just walk around the classroom and we will go from there.